Every year the church gives us a particular gospel that we'll read through the whole year. So we're in year B. And so we're reading the gospel according to Saint Mark. Very good. Glad everyone was listening very carefully. Now every gospel is written for a people, every people in a situation, and every situation demanded lessons. So pretend we're in a time machine and we're going to become the people that St. Mark's gospel is written to. So we hop in our time machine, we go to around the year 65 AD, plus or minus a few years. And we're on the cusp of the first great persecution in the church. It'd be the first, not the last. But it'd be the persecution which would crucify St. Peter, it would behead Paul, it would martyr thousands of witnesses. Simply choosing to be baptized at this time would mean almost certain death. So as you hear this gospel being read, you're huddled in the catacombs celebrating Mass by candlelight in the middle of the night. And things would pop out at you as you read this gospel. First, you'd realize St. Mark uses that word immediately all the time. He uses it over 40 times in his little short gospel. Because for him and for these Christians, there was no other time. Everything was immediate. You would never put off being a Christian for a later date, because you didn't know if you would actually live that long. Everything had to be immediate. Jesus Christ demanded a response immediately. Second, you would note that Jesus Christ was casting out demons at every turn. We hear it over and over and over again in these gospel readings. He's casting out demons, because the reality was that evil existed, and it still does. But he would always rebuke them, cast them out, and then silence them. Because he never wanted the demons to tell people who he was. He wanted people to come to believe by seeing and experiencing him. And then lastly, you would note that no one in the gospel recognizes Jesus as the Son of God until he's dead. The first one to do so was that Roman centurion who pierces his side on the cross and cries out, "Truly this was the Son of God." And so you would be heartened because you realize that it was only amidst Christ's persecution and crucifixion that his identity was truly revealed. And so you'd be heartened amidst your own persecution that Christ is revealed through suffering. So you reflect on that gospel in those dark, damp catacombs, and you begin to experience what your Christian faith means, that it's not something we put off for tomorrow, but it's something immediate. That it's something that, faces the reality that we live in, that there is good and evil, right and wrong. It's a faith that will always, in a sense, have to face persecution. Christ never became a conformist, so neither could the Christian. So our time machine is running out, so we come back to 2012. But I don't think the lessons are all that different. Last week, or last Saturday, I got home from a week's vacation, a hiatus from all forms of news and social communications, just getting away from it all. And I got back that Saturday night and there was that letter from the bishop waiting for me. I'm like, what is going on? So I read this letter and I had to read out all the masses the next day. And my news feed on my Facebook was all lit up with all this discussion about this new healthcare mandate. And so this past week I wanted to really figure out, what exactly is going on. And when I first did some research, I started realizing that if you know any insider things about the Catholic circle, Sister Carol Keehan, who's the president of the Catholic Health Association, Father, what's his name? The president of Notre Dame, Father Jenkins, and the U.S. bishops were all on the same side of this. And this is something I've never seen before, actually. I've never seen them all in agreement about one thing. But I went to the mandate itself, because I wanted to figure out what on earth is it talking about by these preventative services. And it seemed pretty normal. It was mostly screenings or vaccinations for things like hepatitis, screenings for things like anemia or different forms of cancer, cervical, breast cancer, things for HIV, HPV, and just the like there. And then stuffed right in the middle of that all was this contraception thing. And it was weird because I thought first, like, every single one of these things listed is a disease, except pregnancy was thrown in there. And I was thinking, have we reached the point now where pregnancy is a disease? Is that the mindset that we're working from here? But that wasn't really the issue that really, strikes at the heart of the whole matter. There's a far deeper problem. And that comes out with this whole thing of having to give out all certified FDA contraceptives. And what's included in that are things that are what has been dubbed Plan B or morning after pills. And why are these included? Well, first we have to realize, or we have to know that on the federal books, which the FDA follows, pregnancy, the start of pregnancy, is defined as occurring after successful implantation. That's what's on the federal books. Pregnancy begins after successful implantation. So what does that mean? If we take one of these Plan B drugs, something like called Ella, it's one of them. The first thing that it does is it prevents ovulation. So it really does prevent conception from taking place. But if ovulation has already occurred, what it does is it changes the uterine lining. It changes the lining in the womb. And what happens is that if ovulation has already taken place, if fertilization has taken place, so you have a fertilized ovum, or what we would dub a new, unique human life form, or what has been called a pre-embryo. Over the first week, it works its way from the tube to the womb, and it's supposed to implant itself in the womb after about 8 to 12 days. And what these drugs do is it makes the womb inhospitable to implantation. And I was thinking, like, this, it seemed to me very, very similar to what we've done in centuries past. If we didn't want a child, we would bring the child to term, and then you would take it out into the woods or on a hill, and you would just leave it to the inhospitable environment. It would either freeze to death or starve or dehydrate. Except now we just make the inhospitable environment within us. And we have the child, we have this new human life die before it can cry, that type of thing. But the whole issue here is not even a battle over defining when pregnancy begins. That's a whole different thing. But the battle is having the freedom to actually be able to believe when pregnancy begins, to believe differently. Because essentially what the state is saying, what the law is saying, is that if you don't believe what we believe, meaning if you don't believe that pregnancy begins at the implantation, that a pre-embryo is not yet a new human life, if you don't believe that, then you're not welcome into the public square. Essentially, if you don't buy into the state ideology, this new state religion in a sense, then your religion isn't welcome in this pluralistic society. And I was thinking it was, St. Mark's Christians in Rome in the 60s. The state didn't allow them to celebrate their kooky Christianity until after they had offered incense and sacrifice to the state's gods, to the pagan gods. And most of these early Christians would choose rather to die, to suffer martyrdom, than worship false gods. So in a very real way, I think I would, as your priest, I would say that I would honestly rather be arrested than have to submit to this new state religion, this new ideology in a sense. Because the reality is that in the long run, the church is never going to pay for that which deep-seated, its heartfelt tendency, its heartfelt conviction. It will never pay for abortion. What we're doing now is we're simply asking for the freedom to be able to believe something different from the state, and the freedom to be able to serve both Catholic and non-Catholic in the public sector. We're asking for that freedom, which is being denied. Now the Holy Spirit gave St. Mark's Christians in Rome great energy and great fervor, and heartened them to be able to stand up. And like I said, they realized it always had to be done immediately. There was no procrastinating on the Christian life for them. There was no putting it off for tomorrow, because they realized there would always be something that wanted to stifle the gospel. There were always those spirits in the world. So it's my prayer that we as Christians never become conformists to our society, but we always live our Christianity. May we be enheartened by the Holy Spirit today as those first Christians were 2,000 years ago.